Why you never feel ready is because your brain uses perfectionism to protect you from the pain of failure. This biological defense mechanism creates a cycle where you wait for a confidence that will simply never arrive alone. Most people believe that motivation is a prerequisite for action, but the actual neurological data suggests the exact opposite. You are currently trapped in a mental loop that values safety over growth, while your potential slowly fades away. If the feeling of readiness is actually a chemical lie, then what are you really waiting for right now? Every day you wait, your brain quietly reinforces the idea that starting without certainty is somehow dangerous and wrong. That reinforcement hardens into a belief, and that belief becomes the invisible wall between you and everything you actually want. The cruel irony is that the longer you wait to feel ready, the less ready you will ever actually feel. Readiness isn't a destination your brain is steering you toward. It's a moving target designed to keep you exactly where you are. The only way out of that trap is to understand exactly what built it in the first place and why it holds such extraordinary power over you. These three fears don't arrive separately. They stack, and together they construct a feeling that feels like wisdom, but is actually just biology. Recognizing that your hesitation has a neurological address changes everything about how you respond to it. Perfectionism doesn't look like fear. It looks like ambition, like discipline, like someone who simply refuses to settle for less. But underneath those high standards, there's almost always a quieter, more desperate calculation happening. If the work is never finished, it can never be judged, and if it can never be judged, it can never truly fail. That's the trap perfectionism builds so carefully. Not a ladder toward excellence, but a locked door disguised as one. The person who rewrites the same paragraph 17 times isn't chasing quality anymore, they're running from exposure. Every revision becomes a reason to delay, and every delay feels completely justified because the work isn't perfect yet. What makes this so destructive is that perfectionism attacks the very goals it pretends to protect, burning time and energy on polish that was never the real problem. The real problem is that starting means being seen, and being seen means risking something that actually matters to you. Perfectionism promises safety. It delivers paralysis dressed up in the language of high standards. The to-do list grows longer, the plans get more detailed, and the actual work stays untouched on the other side of all that preparation. Psychologists call this emotional regulation. Delay isn't laziness, it's a coping mechanism your brain reaches for when the stakes feel too high. You're not avoiding the work, you're avoiding the feeling that comes with risking failure on something that matters. And the crueler truth is that every hour spent planning instead of doing makes starting feel even harder than before. That feeling you've been waiting for? It was never going to arrive on its own schedule. Neuroscientists call it the action-motivation loop, and it completely inverts everything you've assumed about how readiness works. When you move your body toward a task, your brain releases dopamine, not as a reward for finishing, but as a signal to keep going. The nucleus accumbens, the brain's motivation engine, only fires after it detects forward movement, not before you've taken a single step. This means the confidence you've been waiting for is actually manufactured by the doing itself, not stored somewhere waiting to be unlocked. Every hour you spend waiting for motivation is an hour you're starving the exact mechanism that produces it. Think about the last time you finally started something you'd been avoiding, and how quickly the resistance dissolved once you were actually inside the work. That shift wasn't willpower, it was your brain's chemistry catching up to your body's decision. The mechanism isn't broken, and it isn't mysterious, it's just running in the wrong direction. You don't find motivation and then start. You start, and then motivation finds you. Knowing that action creates motivation doesn't automatically make the first step any easier to take. Your brain still registers the unknown as a threat, and it still fires the same alarm it always has. That alarm isn't irrational. It's the oldest survival software you carry, running exactly as designed. The problem is that software was built for a world where uncertainty usually meant danger, not opportunity. So when you stand at the edge of something new, your mind doesn't weigh the upside. It catalogs every possible way things could go wrong. Perfectionism feeds that catalog, adding conditions. Not yet, not enough, not ready. Procrastination is just the comfortable name we give to fear when we don't want to admit what it actually is. And knowing all of this, understanding the trap completely does almost nothing to spring it open. That's the real paradox, and it deserves an honest answer rather than borrowed optimism. What actually moves people isn't insight. It's a system small enough that fear can't justify saying no. Step 2. Set a timer for 10 minutes and commit to nothing beyond those 10 minutes, nothing more. When the timer stops, you're allowed to quit. But most people don't because momentum has already taken hold. Step 3. Remove every decision you'd have to make before starting, because decisions drain the energy that action needs. Step 4. Tell one person what you're doing today, not your whole vision, just today's single step, spoken out loud. Accountability isn't about pressure, it's about making the invisible visible, and visible things are harder to abandon. Step 5. After you finish, write down one thing that went better than you expected it would. That single habit rewires how your brain predicts future attempts, and predictions are what drive action. 5 steps, no readiness required, and the only moment they work is right now. You already know what you've been waiting to feel ready for, and that thing hasn't changed. The only thing that changes right now is whether you decide to move before the feeling arrives. Readiness isn't a green light your brain switches on when conditions are finally perfect enough to proceed. It's a story you tell yourself to make waiting feel responsible instead of what it actually is. Every person who ever built something real started from exactly the same place you're standing in right now. They weren't more prepared, more talented, or more certain. They were just slightly more willing to feel uncomfortable and act anyway. The fear doesn't leave first. The doubt doesn't leave first. You move first, and everything else adjusts around that single decision. So here's the only question that matters right now. The one that cuts through every excuse you've rehearsed. What is the smallest possible step you can take in the next 10 minutes? Not tomorrow, not after one more video. Right now.